Hey, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with a review of Andor, and this is actually a lost review. It was part of a podcast that I never actually published from back in January of 2023. I had planned on reviewing all the things I felt negative about in 2022 at the end of the year, kind of compiling that into one podcast, and then I was going to follow it up with all the things I felt positive about and were looking forward to in 2023. And I didn't like how it turned out as a whole, so I never published it. But this was a section of that, and I did want to actually publish my review of Andor. So that's what we're going to get here. This is a little bit of lost content. It's not done in a very concise way for a review, but just kind of meant to be part of a bigger one. But I hope you enjoy all the same. For our next one, we're going to talk a bit about Andor. So the show's over. What is my full opinions of the show? Is it the greatest thing ever? Is it the most boring, horrible thing ever? The internet would have you believe it's one of the two. I think it's kind of in the middle. I think it was the guys over the Starlight Digest that put it as there was no mind-blowing moment. And there were some good high moments of the show, but nothing, like even Book of Boba Fett had moments that blew me away. Mostly because it was the Mandalorian episode, and the Luke Skywalker episode, but those blew me away. This is definitely a different kind of Star Wars. And, but I've seen a lot of the discussion around this particular show has been finally something adult, and it's boring, and I don't think everybody's articulating what they mean, so I'm going to try. A lot of times when people say that it's boring, and then the reply was, no, this is adult. I'm going to take a step back. The Mandalorian was adult. First episode, a guy gets cut in half. The episode of Book of Boba Fett with the Mandalorian, he delivers a head. That's pretty adult. Return of the Jedi. That little brothel scene that everybody's like, they put a brothel scene in. What do you think was going on in Jabba's palace? He had women, the Twi'lek, whatever you call it, and Princess Leia, like they're dressed up in dancer garb and in chains and stuff like that. Like, what do you think that is? Like, that's a whole lot worse than a brothel. So, like, the concept of Andor got shot some guy in the face. Well, Mando took the guy's head off. Now, the lack of lightsabers, of the Force, does it need the Force to be a good Star Wars show? And I don't think so. Trying to get rid of the mystery of the Force from the show, I think, is a mistake. But do the characters have to be Force? Do we need a lightsaber battle? No. Was there that eventually in Mandalorian? Yes, there was. Did Mandalorian need that? No, it didn't. Mandalorian was cool in all the episodes up until when they added that. And I was down for that. So I am not one of those people that go, hey, there wasn't Jedi, I don't care. I am really into the smugglers and the bounty hunters and all that part of the Star Wars world. And, the X-Wing pilots and stuff like that. But when we say it's boring, how much screen time was devoted to cereal? Eating cereal? That was boring. There's so much dialogue and drawn out. It's, the prequels got a lot of heat for being political. Now, my brother went and saw the prequels and the movies. He understood the story. He was like 6 years old at the time when they first started coming out. and he understood them just fine. Didn't have a problem with it. So this new situation where this stuff, though, is very dry. And it's a bit different than, having like a political backdrop where, okay, yeah, there's these big things happening. Now, that went over a lot of kids' heads. But Star Wars has always been for everyone. So it's not like I'm trying to make Star Wars for kids. Star Wars is for everyone. And in that respects, I've always felt that Star Wars was for adults. And this idea or concept that some people have that Star Wars has to make this change to advance and to grow. Star Wars, for a long time, was the number one movie property in the world. Now, overall, like, when it comes to, like, toy sales and stuff like that, Pokemon beats it. I don't know, Batman, Spider-Man are probably up there. Just the MCU in general as a movie property is up there. But Star Wars is still, like, the property. Like, it's one of the biggest properties out there on the planet. And you don't get that success and feel like you need to grow. This isn't like some small niche anime trying to make it into the world market. And that being the excuse of why they changed some things for the Western audience or something like that. Like, this is Star Wars. It doesn't need to evolve to grow. It's the biggest thing. It's so, like, this idea that somehow Star Wars was for kids and it needs to grow for adults. But no, adults went and saw Star Wars back in the 70s and the 80s. That concept to me just seems archaic, and it's downplaying just how great Star Wars itself is. Now, what that might be is that your taste in entertainment maybe is maturing, and you're wanting to explore different content. You have a nostalgic feel for Star Wars. Don't try to push Star Wars into stuff that it's not. Don't try to make, Star Wars be Blade Runner. There's a place for that, and if that's like the kind of content you would consume, there are shows coming out. There's different things. It's just like, the new Star Trek stuff that's coming out, and they're acting like the Star Trek world is now more like the Battlestar Galactica world, where like everything's messed up, humanity's doomed, all this stuff. And it's like, that's not what Star Trek is. Like, I don't care if it's a great story, has good characters, good representation, all that stuff, and a good message. Like, if I'm tuning in for Star Trek, I want Gene Roddenberry type Star Trek. I want that world. When I turn into Star Wars, I want to feel like I'm in George Lucas's world. And The Mandalorian does that. Because The Mandalorian has a sense of adventure. It has their scope. Now, there are aspects of Andor that I think are really good. And I think I do think the special effects is a step above stuff like Mandalorian. However, I don't feel like it is Star Warsy enough. So let's talk about the big controversy. Star Wars theory, talking about screws and bricks. And the internet got outraged. And what I found funny is this was clipped from a review that he gave a positive review of Andor. A positive review. He talked, he streamed about an hour before the show dropped. He streamed live him watching Andor. And then he streamed for about an hour afterwards discussing it. And then at the end of that hour of talking about what he just saw, and talking positive and recapping the whole show, he spent about 10 minutes talking about why he felt disconnect. And about 2 minutes of that was clipped by people who don't like him, shared on Twitter and Reddit and stuff, and suddenly, like, the whole internet is making fun of the guy. What's interesting is, in that little clip, he's talking about bricks. And everybody goes, oh, he has a problem with there being bricks. Look at this brick, look at brick. Immediately after that, he talks about the kind of bricks they do have in Star Wars. You know, they have the sandstone bricks, they have this, they have that. So he's not saying that bricks don't exist in Star Wars. He's talking about, hey, that looks like the fake brick mounts that I'd have for my fireplace that I could go pick up down at Home Depot. That looks tacky. That looks too much like, you know, the East Coast America, you know, countryside brick houses. Like, that's what it looked like. That takes you out of it. That it would be that earth-based in look, you know? That's why, hey, the cereal was blue to let you know it was alien cereal. You know, had a little mystique to it. Make it seem ancient, you know. And it's not to say that Star Wars doesn't borrow, because when you look at, like, the temples on Yavin, they totally are made to look like ancient, like, Inca or Aztec temples out in the jungle, you know, Mayan or whatever, you know. It has that feel. But to the majority of us that don't live by that, that does look a little alien. That looks, because it's a sense of adventure, because that's one of the things Star Wars does, is it takes places on Earth that feel almost like an alien planet and makes them an alien planet. You know, you go out into the middle of the desert. Most of us don't live in a desert, so it feels like an alien planet. You go out into an icy tundra. Most of us aren't living in the icy tundra. So you know, you can just imagine, like, this is the whole planet is this. And really it's just a tiny part of our biome. But, you know, that's what's interesting about Star Wars. Now, specifically, and he gave a rebuttal to all this, and he talked about why he made the screw comment. Because he was doing research for his fan film, which, you know, he's spending over $1 million on. You know, obviously he's a hater. But, you know, you see that he's watching some old ILM documentaries. And they talked about how they went to efforts to hide screws so it wouldn't take you out of the immersion. Because if, you know, you're watching it and suddenly you see in this galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, a Phillips head screw, that's going to take you out of it. So he's not saying he doesn't believe in Star Wars having screws. But when you zoom in on a, you know, when Andor looks over to a camera and he looks at it, and the camera's mounted up with 2 Phillips head screws, that looks tacky. That does not look like Star Wars. The special effects, like, they didn't do, like, so stuff like that, especially because this show moves so slow, it asks you to take in the scenery, to soak in every bit of the moment, because nothing's happening. When flash is happening, when that stuff, you know, that stuff can be on the screen and it goes right by. But when you have moments where you're, like, panning over and staring at the camera, staring at you, and you're having that, you're looking on it, you expect to not have something like that take you out of it. I think that's a fair criticism. It's a criticism I had. And I have one that I will add to Star Wars theories. In the final battle, the final episode that everybody was praising, what a wonderful speech, all this stuff, I was completely taken out of the moment, because I will agree, that should be this, like, heart-swelling moment, but you know what? It wasn't for me. And you know why? Because instead of this point, when the Empire has taken over control of this planet, they've gotten rid of the rent-a-cops, they're directly in charge, it wasn't stormtroopers. There were a couple but there were people in SWAT armor. And to me, that's what the stormtrooper's supposed to be. He's supposed to be your guy in SWAT armor. He's supposed to... It looked so much like we were trying to tell the story of recent events, of events over the last couple of decades, where you've had riots and police, you know, how that escalates. that goes from a peaceful protest or a peaceful gathering, a remembrance or something, and then somebody on one side sparks it. And then, despite the fact that 95% of the people there came there with the intention of being peaceful, whether it be the officers or the protesters or the people there, the memorial, whatever, the moment that little incident happens, the thing all is like a boiler just exploded, and it just like comes out. And you know what? That's something really cool to show in Star Wars. However, instead of stormtroopers, I'm looking at what looks like SWAT with no logos on their thing. Like, they were just SWAT. That looked bad. I work with SWAT. I recognize that equipment. They just went down to the store and bought that stuff. You can go buy that. I guess that's great for cosplayers. Will I be able to tell that they're Star Wars when they're in their SWAT armor? I don't know. But that took me out of it big time. And that's supposed to be like the big, lighting the rebellion moment that like was the big finish of the show. And a lot of people were like, wow, that was a great episode. And I just watched it, and I'm sorry, but I was so focused on that I couldn't get over it. I just couldn't get over it. And these are little things. But you know why I'm being so critical? Because the show has operated so slowly. The best part of the show was the stuff with Andy Serkis in the prison. Now, that was 3 episodes. That really could have been 2 episodes. I'm not upset that it was 3 episodes, because that was the best part of this whole show. However, that really could be that. So let me break down how I would change the show. And a lot of it could be done in editing. But really what I would do to change the show. First, I'd add a little more droids peppered in the background. A few more aliens peppered in. Not a lot, a few. Pacing. Now, it could still be a 12-episode season if they wanted, but it would need to have additional plot lines or missions. But if they want to just tell the story that they're telling, here's how I would do it. The first 3 episodes, those are 2 episodes. So you basically take the first 2, combine them into 1. There's only 1 episode worth of real story there. Then you have the second episode is the big action climax to those 2 episodes. The next 3 episodes are, once again, them preparing for the big escape. Now, episode 6, once again, a big action sequence. But the 2 episodes before it, where they were planning out the mission, that's movie montage period. Like, if you were doing this as a movie, that storyline of those 2 episodes easily condensed into 1. So I didn't have a problem with any of the story, any of the stuff that they were laying down in this show. It just was drawn out way too much. So we've eliminated 2 episodes there. Now we have the in-between episode. And then it goes on to the 3 prison episodes. That in-between episode I would eliminate and put half of it on the finale, the episode 6, and the other half on the beginning of the prison episode. And then take a bunch of... And so that would cut that first prison episode down in half. So we still get all the good moments. And then if some of that still needed to exist, then it'd be some stuff from the second episode that we get. So there would be a little condensing of only taking about a half an episode away from the whole prison sequence, but having him be arrested and arraigned and all that stuff being in the first prison episode, not being part of the episode where he goes back and sees his adoptive mom. That should have been kind of after the climax of the whole escape. Just put that in that episode. So you've got that split out, those 3 episodes, and then let's see, where does that go? So that's 3. And then we have the final 2 episodes. And these, for the most part, these could be left the same. The next to the last episode could potentially be developed a little more, have a little more meat to it or whatever. It was okay. But the last episode, my big thing was make the Empire's presence felt. I want to see full stormtroopers and do all that. And to me, that would make a lot of difference. The other thing, unless they're doing something amazing with Serial in the next season, I would cut him out after the third episode. The focus on him and at home with his mom, I don't think 95% of that was not necessary. I did find the stuff with the ISB interesting, and I did find the stuff with Mom Mothma interesting, but it was just done so slow. Now, the stuff done with Mom Mothma's, what is that, her sister or cousin or whatever, that was actually kind of boring. The stuff with Luthen, the stuff with Saw Gerrera, that was good. So, like, there was good in there, but it could have been better. And I think it's just not drawing it out so long. If they had tightened this up, like I said, removing about 3 episodes from this made it a solid 9 or 10 episode show, I think that I would have been much more on board. So I'm not asking for like this to be completely different. I'm just saying tell this same story and you go a few more editing passes over it and you cut down an episode or 2, and then I think the boring argument goes away. Because there is good story in there, but I'm constantly going and doing my laundry and getting a new basket and folding it, and I'm distracted. I am bored out of my mind watching Star Wars. That shouldn't happen. At the very least, with other stuff, I'm outraged, but I have passion. I just walk away from this and I'm just kind of melancholy. I've never had an episode of Star Wars where I could watch 10, 15 minutes in and go, yeah, I'll come back to this later. I'm either like, what in the world are they doing? They're ruining it. Or I'm like, this is the most amazing thing ever. I'm passionate about it. Even Obi-Wan Kenobi, from a while there, I was like, I can't. This make me, I want to feel negative. Turn it off and then watch it for 2 months. But, it still had a response for me. This just doesn't invoke a response for me. It's not bad. It's not amazing. If this was what the rest of Star Wars was going to be, if this was the new benchmark, because a lot of people are talking about, Ro knows, I'm talking about him. But, he'll say, I don't know if we can go back. I'm sorry, but if this was what all Star Wars was like now, I just stopped watching Star Wars. Like, I watched this show. It wasn't bad. It wasn't offensive. I watched this to know the comment. And my biggest takeaway is I am so glad Andor is over so that we don't have to talk about it. So that every podcast I listen to is not talking about Andor. I mean, I have about 20 to 30 Star Wars centered podcasts that have spent nothing but the last 15 weeks talking about Andor. They talked about Andor leading up to Andor, they've talked about Andor during it, and then they've been doing wrap-up shows. But finally we're getting to a point where Andor talk is coming to an end, and here I am talking about Andor. But that is my biggest thing, is I'm glad that we're not talking about it anymore, because I found the discussion of the show so boring, because it's okay, it's milquetoast for a show about this Hispanic character, and we're getting all this. Andor to me was milquetoast. It was a boring show. And it didn't have a lot of exotic flavor to me. It had a very domestic flavor. And it just, I did not enjoy it. I didn't hate it. I'm just kind of meh about it. And it didn't feel like it was in a galaxy far, far away. And it didn't. A lot of people talked about how phenomenal the acting was. You know, Luthen was a great actor. This was the best Saw Gerrera I'd seen so far. Andor was a decent. I already mentioned. What's his name in the prison? Like Caesar. He was great. But Mon Mothma was decent, but Piran, like a lot of the supporting actors that people are praising, they fell flat for me. Most of Andor's friends fell flat for me. Most of just the world in general fell flat for me. So the prison was the highlight. The people on like the big mission that Andor went on, they all fell flat for me. So, you know, none of these characters did I feel invested in, and nor did I care when they died. I didn't care when they died. I didn't care when Andor's mom died. I didn't care. I didn't care about her. The show didn't really give me anything to develop her to care about her. For all the time and all the slow, like, I didn't know what kind of person she was. She rescued Andor. That's all I know. I don't even know what she was doing there. Was she there a scavenger? What was she? Was she a separatist? Why was she there? Why was she running from the Empire? I don't know. I don't know who she was or why she was important. I just know that the whole town loved her, and she gave a big speech at the end. It was good. It was a good speech, but it didn't feel earned for me. I don't know why everybody respects her. I didn't see her as part of the community. I saw her as like minding her own business in the community. But, you know, that's... Maybe I missed something because I was disconnected from the show. But, yeah, so there were a handful of characters. The ISB lady, Deidre, she was okay. And I started out liking Serial, but then he became a very unlikable character. I thought he was going to be a competent, yet green lover of justice. He became a weirdo. It just, overall, my ranking of it is meh. And this is the moment, this is when I say the thing that's going to get me, banned from ever joining the Red 5 Network. I liked Book of Boba Fett better. I can't believe I said that. Nothing in Andor was anywhere near bad. The Skittle Bikes, okay? The slow Power Rangers, they were just bad. They were bad. The fact that the first couple of episodes were good, but then that whole storyline was just thrown away, it was bad. But it had Cad Bane. That was awesome. Boba Fett rode a Rancor. We got to see Luke training Grogu and talking to Ahsoka. Luke and Ahsoka together. That was so amazing. The concepts, the ideas that gets going in your mind. We got to see the Mandalorian doing a bounty mission and get disfellowshipped from his cult. That was cool. That was amazing. Nothing in Andor felt that hype to me. It was good. It was okay. I'm not upset at it. I don't feel the need to strike it from Star Wars. I'm not rallying to remove Andor from canon. It's a great part of canon. And if we're having a lot of shows, a lot of EU stuff like this makes sense. Do I feel like... It was asked, like, should they have said the F word at the end when they replaced that with fight? No. Is it because I'm soft and I'm hurt by bad words? Well, I watch stuff that has bad words, and I personally don't cuss. I think that somebody who has to relate to cussing, really, it's just a lack of eloquence. But at the end, when Star Wars has to start having cussing to feel edgy, to feel relevant, then the franchise is dead. Many will argue it's already dead. I don't. But, I mean, the moment that, like, it being Star Wars can't get you in the seat, that it's got to be Star Wars says the F word to get you in the seat, yeah, no, it doesn't need that. It's Star Wars. And if you really feel like that is what makes it adult, then I don't know, not to insult people, but maybe they're not adult enough themselves. Because, I mean, that's like every teen. Every teenager starts saying the F word constantly, trying to act all grown up. No. And I mean, sure, lots of people talk like a sailor, but also those people, like, if they go in and they're trying to get a loan for the bank or something like that, they're doing something very adult, guess what they're not doing? They're not cussing. Not if they want good service. Not if they want stuff to be right. So, it just kind of shows you, there's a time and a place, and adults know how to suck it up and not cuss when it's necessary. So, I don't think adding cuss words suddenly makes Star Wars adult. So, that's just me. Them saying shit, like, I don't cuss, I don't really consider that a cuss word. I don't really use that word, but I don't, like, I live on a ranch. We shovel a lot of shit. It's like, I don't know why everybody was up in arms over that. They've said hell in Star Wars. It's just, okay, I'm done talking Andor. Let's get on to Tales of the Jedi. Okay, so I kind of got a little lost there at the end. But yeah, once again, this was meant to be part of a larger, podcast where I was just kind of ranting and venting at the end of 2022. I was not in a happy place at the moment, not enjoying content, and I was just kind of therapeutically venting about that. This was not meant to be kind of a proper review of the show, but I will say that overall I did was not offended by Andor. I was one of those people that had problems with the bricks and screws, and if you want to know what I mean by that in actual more detail, hit me up. But I liked the No Way Out, and there were things I liked, but ultimately I was bored, and I didn't feel like I was in the Star Wars universe. And so while it didn't upset me in my fandom in any way, it's not something I ever plan to go back and watch again. But, I'm glad that some people like it, and like I said, it doesn't offend me. I'm not upset that it exists in Star Wars. So I'm happy for those that enjoy it, and I hope that Season 2 is something that I enjoy more. But I will probably never go back and watch this again myself. With that, I hope everybody has a good day, and they enjoy this last bit of content.